This is your need to know. This is your need to know.
Okay, so this deep dive is going to be a tough one,
Yeah.
but an important one. We've gotten a lot of questions from listeners about what to do if, well,
If things take a turn for the worse. Yeah.
if things take a turn for the worse. And to be honest, even looking through these sources that you all have sent in about what to do if,
If a fascist regime
if a fascist regime were to,
take over,
it's pretty scary stuff.
it is.
But I think we can sort of break it down and
Absolutely.
hopefully make it a little less scary.
Yeah. And give people, I think most importantly, some concrete steps to take because information is power, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it's one thing to read about this stuff in a history book. It's a whole other thing when it feels like,
It's knocking on your door.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you're here to help us sort of wade through all of this.
Yeah, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that feeling of uneasiness you might be having. It's
Yeah.
not paranoia. It's a natural response. And throughout history, these types of regimes, they
Go after.
they go after basic freedoms. There are limits on free speech. You see heavy surveillance and punishments, severe punishments for anyone who even questions the people in power.
Yeah.
So it's heavy stuff, but that's the context we need to be working with.
That's the context we need to be working with, yeah. So it's not about panicking, but it was about being prepared. A lot of these sources talk about the importance of staying informed, but also being discreet.
Yeah.
How do you even balance those two things?
Well, just imagine, right? You're living in a society where even whispering your political opinions could get you in trouble. It's serious stuff. So these sources, they recommend, well, they kind of have a two-pronged approach, I guess you could say. First, diversify your news sources. Don't just rely on mainstream. Seek out independent journalists, international outlets, even citizen reports. Always verify carefully, though.
Yeah, that's really important.
Always double check. And then think about how you consume and share information.
Right.
Like use a privacy-focused browser, something like Brave or Tor, and look into encrypted messaging apps, something like Signal.
So it's like becoming a bit of a digital detective.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, speaking of things that sound like they're straight out of a spy movie, I was really struck by how much these sources emphasize community. You'd think in this kind of environment, everyone would just kind of
Hole up,
hole up and
isolate.
isolate themselves. But it seems like the opposite is true.
Yeah, because think about it. If the systems you've always relied on, if they start to fail or become dangerous even,
Right.
who do you turn to?
Your neighbors.
Your neighbors, your friends, your local network.
Yeah.
Those become your lifeline. They can offer practical support, a sense of, safety in numbers, and even connect you with resistance efforts more safely.
Oh, okay. So it's about more than just having like a friendly face nearby.
Yeah.
It's really about building this network of mutual support.
Exactly.
And it seems like, even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
Absolutely, yeah. Helping an elderly neighbor with their groceries, sharing extra produce from your garden, or even just lending an ear.
Yeah.
It all helps.
Yeah.
It strengthens those community bonds. The regime, they want to divide people through suspicion and fear.
But these small acts.
But these acts of solidarity, they can counteract that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about being smart about information, strengthening our local connections. It's all very, analog, almost old-fashioned. But what about our digital world? It's hard to imagine life today without
the internet.
without our phones and computers.
Yeah.
But how do we stay safe online in this kind of environment?
Well, that's where things get a little more, technical, right? And these sources, they really go deep into digital security. Strong, unique passwords for every account, and I mean really strong. Think passphrases with random words and symbols, And using a VPN, have you heard of those?
I have,
A virtual private network.
Yeah.
It encrypts your internet traffic, makes it harder to track your activity.
Right, so it's like creating a digital shield.
Exactly, a digital shield.
But it sounds like it goes beyond just using the right tools.
It does. It's also about being mindful of what you share online. Because think about it, in a surveillance state, even harmless things could be used against you. So be careful about what you search for, what you talk about online. Even liking or sharing certain things on social media could be risky.
So it's like living a double life, one online and one offline.
Yeah, in a way, it is.
And speaking of unsettling things, a lot of these sources talk about the need to create a family safety plan.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds like something out of a disaster movie.
It does.
But it seems like it could be really important.
It's about facing a hard truth.
Yeah.
Right? Things might get bad enough that you need to leave your home in a hurry.
Okay.
So you need a plan.
Okay, so what does that plan look like?
Well, for starters, map out safe routes out of your neighborhood. Figure out a meeting point if you get separated.
Okay.
Make a list of important numbers, people outside your area who could help.
Hmm.
And pack a go bag with essentials, clothes, meds, copies of documents, some cash.
It's like that old saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Right.
Better to be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Yeah, definitely.
But what if things get really bad? Like, what if staying just isn't an option anymore? A few sources mention seeking external support or even asylum.
It's a complex issue.
Right.
But it needs to be considered. These sources, they suggest weighing the risks very carefully.
Of staying versus...
Staying versus leaving, yeah. You need to research asylum options, understand the requirements, the procedures, the whole thing.
It's a tough decision.
Yeah,
But for some, it might be the only one.
it might be.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about money. I know it might seem...
Trivial.
Yeah, trivial.
In the grand scheme of things.
But a few of these sources talk about, some really practical advice for maintaining,
Financial stability.
financial stability during all this.
Yeah, it's not about becoming a millionaire.
Right.
It's about having enough to get by when everything's disrupted.
Right.
So they recommend, first of all, you need an emergency budget.
So, figure out what you absolutely need each month
Exactly.
for your essential expenses.
Exactly. And then, look into community resources that might be available. Food banks, clothing exchanges, even just neighbors, helping neighbors.
Right.
And don't underestimate bartering, trading skills and services. That's a time-tested way to get things done, especially when...
When those traditional systems start to break down.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like tapping into that age-old spirit of ingenuity.
Human ingenuity. Yeah. It's amazing what we can do when we have to.
Okay, so we've talked about staying informed, building community,
Huh.
digital security, finances. I mean,
It's a lot.
it's a lot to take in.
It is. But remember, you're not alone in this.
Right.
And just by being here, by listening to this, you're taking a huge first step.
Right, you're being proactive.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get specific. You mentioned in your emails that a new government is taking office in just a few months.
Yeah, a few months, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't give you a lot of time
No, it doesn't.
to prepare.
But it's still time.
Okay.
It's still time to act. And these sources, they all agree. Securing your digital privacy, that's got to be your top priority right now. Start with those password and VPN tips we talked about.
Okay.
And work on those local networks. Join a community garden, go to a neighborhood meeting, just get to know the people on your street.
Right, build those connections.
Build those connections, exactly. And most importantly, develop that detailed emergency plan
While you still have time.
while you still have time. Prior planning prevents poor performance, right?
Right, that's right.
And stay informed. Knowledge is power here, especially as this new government, rolls out its policies.
Okay, so in your emails, you mentioned that you manage diabetes, you care for your elderly mother-in-law, and you're navigating a potentially hostile work environment.
Yeah.
Those are some very specific challenges, and I'm wondering, do these sources offer any advice on how to deal with those?
Yeah, they do. And it's all about thinking ahead, being resourceful.
Okay.
So for your diabetes, for example, they talk about stocking up on those essential supplies.
Like extra insulin.
Extra insulin, testing strips, yeah.
So basically creating a buffer?
Yeah, a buffer in case access to healthcare becomes limited.
Okay.
They also recommend connecting with local or online diabetes support groups. They can
Okay.
offer advice, help with supplies, navigating the healthcare system, all of that.
That's like crowdsourcing solutions.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
very specific challenges. Okay. What about your mother-in-law?
Well, for her, they suggest having backup care plans.
Okay.
So talk to friends, family, neighbors who could step in if you're ever unable to
Just provide care yourself.
provide care. Yeah. Look into community resources for seniors, people with mobility issues, knowing where to turn for medication, transportation, all those things. That can be huge.
Okay, that's great. But what about the work situation? It's one thing to be prepared at home, but how do you navigate, a work environment that might be hostile where speaking your mind could be risky.
Yeah, that's tricky. It's a delicate balance. But these sources, they do offer some advice. First, be discreet. Don't broadcast your views or your preparations. And document everything. Any interaction that could be used to protect yourself, keep a record of it. Conversations, emails, any incidents of harassment, anything like that.
So you're building a paper trail.
Yeah, paper trail just in case.
Okay.
And be careful who you talk to at work. You might want to vent, confide in someone, but choose your confidants carefully. And if you do feel the need to speak out, use encrypted messaging apps or meet in person somewhere private.
Okay, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate,
Yeah,
but you're being proactive, you're seeking information. Those are the right steps.
they are. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Connect with people you trust, build those support networks, and don't hesitate to ask for help.
I think that's such an important point. Even when things are tough, we can find strength in each other.
We can. It's that human connection that gets us through.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're going to continue exploring these themes after a quick word from our sponsors.
This is your need to know. This is your need to know. This is your need to know. This is your need to know.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, as we were going through these sources, something really struck me. It's not just about, stockpiling beans and rice or creating escape routes. It's about a whole
shift in mindset.
shift in mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we're so used to convenience, instant gratification, but these sources, they encourage us to rediscover a different way of living.
Like, think back to our grandparents, great-grandparents even. They relied on practical skills, resourcefulness, community. Those things got them through some really tough times.
It's like we're being called to tap into that, inner pioneer spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they talk about learning basic gardening
Oh, yeah.
to supplement your food, right? First aid for medical emergencies, even home repairs.
Right.
These might seem like simple things, but they can make you and your community a lot less dependent on systems that might not be there when you need them.
It's funny. We usually think of progress as moving away from those kinds of skills, not towards them.
I know, right? But it makes sense in this context.
It does.
Like, if the grocery stores are empty, knowing how to grow your own food, that's invaluable.
Yeah.
If healthcare systems are overwhelmed, basic first aid could be the difference between a small problem and a disaster.
Right. So it's not just prepping for a specific event.
No.
It's about building up that resilience, that resourcefulness
Exactly.
that can help you with any challenge.
Any challenge, yeah.
And you mentioned community, several times in the last segment.
Yeah.
It's like a recurring theme.
It is. And because having that network of people you can rely on, not just for practical stuff, but emotional support too, that's crucial.
Right.
Imagine going through all of this alone. It would be,
It would be terrifying.
yeah, incredibly difficult.
It really takes a village, doesn't it?
It does.
Especially when things feel so,
Uncertain.
uncertain and scary.
One of the sources even recommended practicing mindfulness, self-care,
Oh,
to manage that stress and fear. It might seem counterintuitive, but taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally, that's essential.
so it's not just about the outward preparations.
No.
It's about cultivating that inner strength, too.
Exactly.
Okay, so what kind of self-care practices are we talking about?
Well, they suggest things like spending time in nature,
Oh,
deep breathing exercises, anything that brings you joy, helps you relax.
right.
Even just 5-10 minutes a day can make a difference.
It's like that oxygen mask on an airplane, right?
Exactly.
You got to take care of yourself first.
Take care of yourself first, then you can help others.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They also talk about limiting exposure to,
Negative news.
all the doom and gloom.
It's easy to get sucked into that 2047 news cycle,
Right.
but all that negativity, it can really drain you.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
So choose your news sources wisely, set some boundaries on how much you consume, and make time for things that, nourish your soul.
So finding that balance between staying informed and protecting your mental health.
Exactly.
That's tough.
It is.
It's important.
It is.
Okay, let's face it. Even with all the self-care in the world, this stuff is heavy.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel,
Overwhelmed.
totally overwhelmed.
But one of the sources, I had a really good point, focus on small, achievable steps.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, instead of getting bogged down by the big picture, break it down into smaller tasks.
Okay, so instead of like getting paralyzed by fear.
You take action.
Yeah. Okay.
So start with something small, organize those important documents, make a basic budget, learn a new skill, or even just declutter a corner of your house.
Right.
Those little victories, they can build momentum.
Yeah, that's like a snowball effect.
Exactly.
It starts small, but
it keeps growing.
it keeps growing, yeah.
Exactly.
Speaking of small but important details, one of the sources mentioned something I hadn't really considered before, creating a discrete
Storage system.
storage system for, sensitive stuff.
Yeah, it's about minimizing risk.
Right.
A small safe, a hidden compartment, even encrypted digital storage.
Okay.
Having a secure place for those essential documents, medications, valuables that can really give you peace of mind.
It's like you're your own personal security consultant.
In a way, yeah. And that same source, they talked about clear communication within your family.
Oh, okay.
Like, discuss these preparations openly with your husband. Divide responsibilities. Even come up with a code word or signal you can use if you ever feel threatened.
It's about being on the same page.
Yeah, working together.
Working together, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you manage diabetes.
I do.
And a few of these sources talk about, accessing healthcare in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
Do they offer any specific advice for folks with chronic health conditions?
They do. It's really about being proactive and resourceful. Like for someone with diabetes, they recommend connecting with those diabetes support groups.
Yeah.
They can offer advice on getting supplies, dealing with the healthcare system, all that.
It's like crowdsourcing solutions again.
It is.
For those very specific challenges.
Exactly. And they also suggest checking out community health programs, free clinics, anything that might offer help to people with chronic conditions. Knowing where to turn for medication, transportation, all those things, it can be a lifesaver.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like these sources are really encouraging us to, shift our perspective. Like not relying solely on those established systems.
Yeah.
But building up these more resilient, community-based solutions.
And that shift, that can be really empowering.
Right.
Recognizing that even when things are tough, we can adapt, we can innovate, we can support each other.
We can take care of ourselves and each other.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered gardening, first aid, digital security, community support.
It's a lot, yeah.
But there's one more critical piece of advice we need to discuss, and it's about something none of us really like to think about. Physical safety.
Yeah, that's a heavy one.
It is.
But the sources, they don't shy away from it. They offer some, sobering but practical advice on what to do if you're questioned, or worse, attacked.
Yeah, this is where things get really real.
They do.
So it's important to, approach this information calmly.
Absolutely. And the first thing they stress is prioritize safety above all else. If you feel threatened, de-escalate the situation. Remove yourself if possible. Avoid confrontation unless there's absolutely no other choice.
Like that old saying, the best way to win a fight is to avoid it altogether.
Exactly.
But what if you can't? What if you're, confronted or detained?
Well, they acknowledge that sometimes avoidance isn't an option
Right.
in those cases, they say.
Yeah.
Know your rights if you still have any.
Right.
And try to get legal representation.
Oh.
Document any abuse or mistreatment if it's safe to do so.
Okay.
For potential legal action later.
It's a chilling thought.
It is.
But it's important to be prepared.
It is. Preparation can make all the difference. They recommend simple things like setting up a code word with your trusted contacts.
Oh, okay.
Having that go bag ready. Mapping out safe routes, even potential escape plans.
Wow.
And they talk about basic self-defense.
Right.
But only as a last resort.
Of course.
It's about, having those options, feeling a little more in control.
Yeah. And even those small steps, they can increase your sense of security.
They can.
For sure. What else can people do to, feel more prepared, more empowered?
One of the sources talked about mental rehearsal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, might sound odd, but mentally walking through different scenarios.
Oh, okay.
Visualizing how you'd respond, that can really help you feel less overwhelmed if something actually happens.
So you're practicing in your mind.
Exactly.
So you're not caught completely off guard.
Exactly.
Okay. And they also talk about maintaining a sense of hope and purpose.
Yes, yeah.
Even when things are,
Really tough.
really tough.
Yeah, it's easy to get discouraged. But remembering what you're fighting for, what you're protecting, That can give you strength.
It's that fuel that keeps you going.
It is. It is. We've been talking about some pretty dark stuff.
We have.
But I think it's important to end on a hopeful note. These sources, they do offer some guidance on staying positive and resilient.
Okay, good.
One of them talked about focusing on what you can control.
Okay.
You can't control what the regime does,
Right.
but you can control how you respond, how you prepare, your connections with others.
Right, right.
And another source emphasized finding meaning in everyday life.
Okay.
Spending time with loved ones, pursuing a hobby, connecting with your community.
Right.
Those little things, those sparks of
Those
joy.
be a difference.
They do. They sustain us.
It's like finding those little glimmers of light in the darkness.
Exactly.
The things that remind us why we keep fighting.
Exactly. And remembering that even when things are at their worst, the human spirit is incredibly resilient. We've got creativity, compassion. We've got each other.
That's right. And we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about some really heavy stuff today, preparing for this potential shift towards fascism.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, even I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all of it.
Yeah, it's understandable. We've covered a lot.
We've covered so much. Digital security, emergency planning, building community, even facing, potential threats to our safety.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
And it's okay to feel, all sorts of things. Fear, anxiety, even anger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we've opened Pandora's box and it's hard to close it once you've seen what's inside.
It is. It is. But these sources, they don't just leave us with a sense of dread, right? They actually give us some really valuable insights into how to deal with these feelings.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like, they emphasize that acknowledging those feelings, that's the first step.
Right.
It's not about pretending everything's fine or ignoring those emotions. It's about giving yourself permission to feel them, recognizing that it's normal to feel this way when you're facing a real threat.
So we're not trying to, bury those feelings.
No.
We're facing them head on.
Face them head on, yeah.
Okay, but what do we do with those feelings once we've acknowledged them? How do we keep them from, paralyzing us?
Well, one of the sources talked about finding healthy outlets, whether it's talking to someone you trust, journaling, making art, exercising, anything that helps you express those feelings.
Right, so they don't bottle up.
Exactly. You got to let that pressure out.
Okay, and they also talk about reframing your perspective a little.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of focusing on what you can't control, focus on
What you can.
Yeah, what you can. You can't control what the regime does, but you can control how you respond, how you prepare, how you connect with others.
Those are the things you have power over.
Right, and that's empowering in itself.
It is.
And you've mentioned connection and community before, and that seems to be a key theme throughout all these sources, right?
It really is. These sources, they all say, you don't have to face this alone.
Right.
Build that strong network of friends, family, neighbors, and it can make all the difference. That sense of belonging, the shared purpose, knowing that you have people you can count on.
United we stand, divided we fall, right?
Exactly. But in this case, it's not just about standing together, it's about thriving together.
Thriving together. Yeah, I like that. But these sources also talk about how communities facing this kind of repression, they find creative ways to support each other.
Yeah.
Like they build these underground networks to share information and resources. They create their own alternative economies. They even find ways to celebrate their culture and their identity, in defiance of the regime.
It's amazing, right? Like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But even with the best preparation, the best support system, I mean, there are going to be setbacks, right?
There will be.
Challenges, times when we feel like giving up.
Of course.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, one of the sources, it reminded us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit, it always finds a way.
Right.
It's incredibly resilient.
Yeah.
Throughout history, people have faced unimaginable hardship, but never gave up hope. They resisted, even when the odds were stacked against them.
And those stories, they can give us strength, right?
They do. They remind us that we're not alone, that this isn't the first time humanity has faced these kinds of challenges.
And that we can overcome them.
We can.
So for our listeners out there, what does all this mean for you? I think the key takeaway from these sources is this. You're not alone. You've got resources. You've got your community. And you have the power to make choices to protect yourself and the people you love.
Yeah, and those choices, they don't have to be huge, dramatic things. They can be small, everyday actions. Reaching out to a neighbor, learning a new skill, taking a few minutes to breathe, finding a way to express yourself, connect with your community.
It's about those little things.
It is. Every small step you take, it's a victory. It strengthens you, it strengthens your community.
It's like planting seeds of hope and resistance. Even in the toughest times, life finds a way to bloom.
Beautifully said. And remember, you're not defined by these challenges. You're defined by how you choose to respond to them.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. It's been heavy, but I think it was important.
It was.
And I hope you found it helpful, maybe even a little inspiring.
Yeah, remember, you have the strength to face whatever comes. And as always, reach out if you have any questions or need more information.
We're here for you. Stay informed, stay connected, stay strong. We're in this together.
This is your need to know.